The germ, the seed of power. Above is drawn a diagram of a typical seed with two cotyledons. The cotyledons are specialized rudimentary leaves containing a supply of nourishment sufficient for the initial stage of the development of the germ. The germ is the real thing, the seed of identity. Within its delicate mechanism lies the will to power, the function which is to seek and eventually to find its full expression in form. The seed of power and the will to live constitute the simple working idea upon which all that follows is based, as to efflorescence. The organic and the inorganic. By the word organic is commonly understood. Was it?
By the word inorganic.
Oh, sorry.
It's important.
Thanks for correcting me on the important ones. By the word inorganic is commonly understood that which is lifeless or appears to be so, as stone, the metals, and seasoned wood, clay, or the like. But nothing is really inorganic to the creative will of man. His spiritual power masters the inorganic and causes it to live in forms which his imagination brings forth from the lifeless, the amorphous. He thus transmutes into the image of his passion that which of itself has no such power. Thus man in his power brings forth that which hitherto was non-existent. For man is power, and this power is native in nature within the power of the germ of the seed. Thus he commands at will the realm of the organic or living, and therein again he creates as he wills, for he has the power to will. It is one of his many powers. Hence, for the germ of the typical plant seed with its resident powers, he may substitute in thought his own will as the seat of vital power in a figurative or imagined seed germ, which shall be the utterly simple energy basis of a theory of efflorescence, evolving concordantly a theory of plastic control of the inorganic. These two elements of our premise are not to be considered separate conceptions to be harmonized, but as two phases of a single impulse of man's creative imagination and will. The will to create in the likeness of his emotions and his intellect, the passion to create in the image of his own power, the urge to create companions of his innermost thought. Man's power to create is ultimately based on his power to sympathize, for sympathy is among man's powers. In discussing man's powers, it is here and now postulated that they are congenital, that they are not gifts received from any outer source, but are more simply, and on reflection more obviously, phases or subactivities of that integral solitary ego, which and alone is the index of racial and individual identity. It is to the man, this ego, precisely in essence of principle, what the seat of power in the germ is to the future plant form, for it is the power of initiative. All powers are resident therein. These congenital powers of ego are so numerous, so manifold, so varied, and their delicate actions and interreactions so hidden to the unobservant or the prejudiced eye, that their integrity is ignored. They excite no particular comment. They do not amaze us as startling evidence of manpower as such, because we casually regard them as separately imparted virtues, faculties, endowments, gifts, or whatnot, without clearer thought as to a possible common radiation of them from a definite spiritual center of being and power. Now, the ego is not merely the seat of intellectual consciousness, but what is of vastly greater importance, it is primordially the seat of instinct. It is instinct. The intellect is but one of its powers. So man's powers we are gradually to unfold to view and to clarify to the intelligence. But surely one of the greatest of these is sympathy. Sympathy implies exquisite vision, the power to receive as well as to give, a power to enter into communion with living and with lifeless things, to enter into a unison with nature's powers and processes, to observe in a fusion of identities, life everywhere at work, ceaselessly, silently, abysmal in meaning, mystical in its creative urge, in myriad pullulation of identities and their outward forms. Sympathy, thus understood as a power, is the beginning of understanding, for knowledge alone is not understanding. Hence, there could be no genuine understanding of the nature of creative art of any kind, or creative activity of any kind, without a clear vision of man's innate powers and their latent intensity, evoked and aroused to action by the power of his desire, which is an emotion and therefore instinctive. In a somewhat cursory way, we have insistently spoken of man's powers as originating and contained within himself. That is, as not given from without or from above through any process of magic, benevolence, dispensation, or special selective choice. In other words, it is desired to be understood that such powers are natural. Even when dormant, suppressed, or inarticulate, they are potential. It is now insisted that genius is potentially universal. A serious, costly, and most reactionary, wasteful, and suppressive defect in the education of all of us, except the really free spirits, lies in this: that the affirmation of man as a newly discovered, normal, self-regulating power has been regarded as little short of heresy, whereas in fact such affirmation is of that truth which shall make actually, rather than idealistically, for freedom, and is chief factor in the program, Man, Know Thyself. Now with minds reasonably free from current superstition, surviving traditional faith in multifarious magical formulas, together with a concurrent homage paid to phantasms and mirages, let us regard man's powers in a simple, informal way. Let us try to visualize, in a measure, the natural man, the seed of genius. As a convenient fiction, man's integral, interfluent powers may be grouped separately and isolated, each as physical, emotional, intellectual, moral, and spiritual, as though such were the fact. But in pursuing such method, it is ever to be borne in mind that a living power, not an idealistic abstraction or non-entity, is to be dealt with. We shall premise this part of our discourse with the affirmation that the word negative is devoid of valid natural meaning, that the word positive is a universal, all-pervading symbol of power. As to the groups of powers to which we have alluded, they may be outlined as follows. Group 1. The physical powers are well known, chiefly for our purpose. They are body growth and conservation, muscular control and locomotion, the power to do things, to effect changes, to create situations. Group 2. The intellectual group starts in the power of curiosity and ends in highly sophisticated manipulation. In this group are found the powers of observation, of memory, reflection, and of reasoning. And by reasoning, we mean the construction of a diagram or model purporting to show how curiosity works to satisfy its craving for orderly form. Group 3. The emotional group embraces every impulse, every power of feeling, an enormous volcanic complex, the base of action, especially of spectacular action, private or public, secret or open. It is of instinct. It is the great power that moves the people of the world, even as they are busy denying it, even as they exalt intellect to the rank of fetish. Group 4. The moral group, the great stabilizing power, much misunderstood and little used by men, turned into trivialities by them, unknowing that its central power of free will choice is the axis of man's being, the determinant of his character, that upon the soundness of his choice, individually and collectively, rests the issue whether he shall continue to be tyrannized by fate or shall assert and stabilize his freedom, his integrity, and thus create and control his destiny. To face this task is the one great adventure of our day and the days to come. It is the world's hope, the passionate desire that now stirs the hearts of men. Yet to be free, man's spirit must liberate and organize his instinctive powers. His intellect has held them too long in bondage. He must recognize and utilize the broad truth that fate has ever been himself, that destiny now lies within himself. Hence his choice, the most potent of his moral powers. The deepest moral truth is this, that the power of choice resides in all men. Group 5. The spiritual group functions as a super quality in clarity of vision. It sees as in a dream. It feels as in the deep depths of instinct. It is a power hidden, calm, quiescent in the wilderness of being, serene in its vast solitude, alert in its piercing intuitions, utterly aware of life, contemplating the mystery, keen to the open power of life, consenting and contented, that life is a dream within a greater dream, and man himself a dreamer within the dream of life. Then, as in a dream, spirit contemplates spirit, life contemplates life, man contemplates man. Especially does spirit contemplate its own vast powers, for it is the veritable ego. Equally does it concentrate its vision on mankind, on man himself, man physical, intellectual, emotional, moral, spiritual, to awaken man as by the call of a transcendent chanticleer, in the dawning hour, to consciousness of himself, to a realization of his own power, nature and his own powers, to evoke his kindness, his faith, and his courage, to dispel his fear. The purpose of setting forth man's powers in groups is to show their conjoint powers in practical affairs, their mutual reinforcement of each other's power. Thus, the physical man may be called the worker, the artificer. The inquiring man becomes the scientist. The emotional man dramatizes the activities. He colors life. The contemplative, speculative man becomes the philosopher. The moral power of man urges on toward democracy, the great dream. The dreamer man becomes the seer, the mystic, the poet, the prophet, the pioneer, the affirmer, the proud adventurer. He dreams his dream with open eyes, with clear vision of realities, with far foreseeing outlook, with intense, persistent concentration upon an idea, a purpose. His power utilizes and manipulates all power, focusing their aim upon a program of genuine achievement. And thus the physical man, the artificer, becomes a stronger by virtue of inquiry. Science, stronger still through added emotion. Dramatization, stronger still through the stimulus and support of philosophy. Stronger still through the tonic of moral poise as expressed in human responsibility and accountability. And thus he reaches the summit of his powers when all these incremental powers are folded in his dream of creative power. And he rises to the heights of that utterly simple artificer, that super manipulator who materializes his dreams in the everyday world for the good of mankind. For man's powers are not to be taken as abstractions, as separated names or figures of speech in books or talk, but as compelling evidence of man's true nature. For in this intimate, dramatic situation, we are confronted in thought by the astounding fact that throughout all history, man has been neither really sought nor truly found. To seek and find man is the modern adventure, an undertaking quite attainable if the method be simple and the spirit free. The trail to man's simple powers leads with many windings through the jungle of complexities we call civilization. It broadens and straightens as we follow the scent of what man has left behind him in thought and deed. We suddenly sigh, glimpsing the man of today and what he thinks and does, the man of today in the man of the past, the man of the past in the man of today. And as we trudge onward through the phantasmagorian obscurantism of our preconceptions, because urged on by the impulsion of discovered facts, or perhaps eagerly, if clear-headed and self-willed, and as illusion after illusion falls from us, and as veil after veil rises from before the apparition of our fears, man, the reality, suddenly appears, to our utter dismay or utter joy, that man is not what our kind for so long has believed him to be, and still believes him to be. So the last veil lifts, the reality, man is found sound to the core, the quintessence of power, the dreamer of dreams, the creator of realities, the greatest of artificers, the master craftsman. That the modern dream, obscured, inarticulate as yet, is to be found on the reality of a man and his powers, a civilization befitting him and his powers. Thus dawns the modern light upon the art of the world. It reveals that all men in their native powers are craftsmen, whose destiny is to create courageously, wisely, and worthily a fit abiding place, a sane and beautiful world. And thus does the nature of universal art begin to emerge within the glow of this modern light. With this brief impressionistic sketch of man's powers constantly to be borne in mind by the student, we shall now begin to set forth a specific aspect in the technical form of the application of such powers to material things. Louis Sullivan.